r/AskReddit. We hear a lot of worst day stories on AskReddit. People with emotionally difficult jobs, police, EMS, firefighters, doctors, nurses, therapists, etc. What was your best day on the job? I was a teacher in a low-income charter school, which you may recognize as a recipe for disaster. The school was poorly run, we had to provide most supplies ourselves, and had unreasonable and unrealistic expectations placed on us. I was teaching first grade at the time. We had a rule that only one child could be out of the classroom at a time, no matter what. I had 30 kids. Eventually, one of my kids had a bathroom accident. I have to say here, if I knew he had to go that bad, I would have let him go, rules be damned. He never gave any indication that it was an emergency. He did his best, but first graders have small bladders. I got him a change of clothes and minimized his embarrassment as much as I could. His mom was furious. She came in the next day and spent a solid 10 minutes screaming at me. A dean finally came and escorted her away, and I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. She stayed at the school the entire day and just watched. She saw what the teachers were going through and what we had to deal with. She came back to me at the end of the day and apologized. She was my biggest supporter from then on, and if I needed something, she had it for me. On the day I quit, she hugged me and told me that I was too good for that place, and it was her son's last day too. Obviously, I've had better days than that in my career, but that was a day that gave me hope and helped me not give up my career due to one bad school. It's a very difficult job. I think too many teachers have a bad first experience and then assume every school is like that. Just as with any job, there are always going to be aspects of it that suck, and I do think that teaching as a profession has more negative aspects than a lot of career fields, but it is absolutely a job that can vary wildly depending on the school district, and even individual schools within the district. Good on you for sticking with it. We need good teachers. Teachers don't get paid enough and don't get nearly enough credit for the work they do. Much respect. I'd been designing this machine along with a mechanical engineer. I'd designed the controls for it and was reasonably sure it would be okay, maybe a few bugs to work out, but the code seemed stout enough. We powered the unit up, went through the setup cycle and went through the manual cycle. It worked perfectly. The me said, "Let's try auto." It worked without a single hiccup. That afternoon, a project I'd spent almost 2 months straight on ran its first product. The cool thing, the place I worked had a development clause for engineering. When you came up with an expansion or engineering plan, it was more or less written in stone. If you went over the date, you were shuffled down the project list. But if you finished before the date, they had a cool little feature. Every profit from that machine from the date it ran production until your scheduled end date was split up between the people who worked on it, since the company figured that money was a bonus anyway. We'd started production almost a month before our scheduled finish. I paid off a car and bought a motorcycle. Nice. That's actually a great policy. Policeman in small town. Got a call to try and locate a woman who was on the heart transplant list. She wasn't answering her phone or pager. Early 90s and she didn't have a cell phone. It was in the middle of the night and cold in the middle of February. I knocked on the door of every neighbor on our cul-de-sac without success. Last house on cul-de-sac, which was across the street, told me she'd gone to her mother's out of town. Was able to get her number and contact her. She got a new heart that night. I'm retired now and still see her on occasion. She always makes a big deal and hugs me. She'd forgotten her pager and didn't go back to get it, thinking what are the chances they'll call tonight. Nurse here. I was a student on a cardiac unit and there was a lady there waiting for surgery. She and her husband spoke little English, although their friend was there sometimes to help translate. The night before her surgery her husband and friend left and I helped her take a sanitizing shower to prep for the next day. My preceptor told me her surgery was extremely risky and carried only a 20% chance of success. Neither of us were sure if she understood this fully, but she knew it was necessary and she was scared. I kept thinking it might be her last night on earth and she was here all alone. Through broken communication her last words to me that night were her thank yous, because she said we were so sweet and caring in a time when she was so afraid. I didn't care whether I was allowed or not, but I gave her a strong hug before I left that night. On the eve of surgery she was all alone, regular hospital meal, with little ability to communicate. I left with a terrible sadness. I was relieved when I did see her the next week, when she demanded more hugs and asked why I wasn't her nurse again. There are days we see someone for the last time, and sometimes we never find out. Then there are days when things go well and people remember the kindness they received instead of their fear. Medic here, best day on the job was my no-hitter, not a single call in 14 hours. Glorious day that was. We saved a couple of kids stuck in a locked warehouse. It made my day seeing their faces after we had rescued them. I worked physical rehab in a skilled nursing facility. I had a young, early 40s patient with a hereditary degenerative condition who had been in different hospitals and facilities for months. In addition to genuine pain and disability, she was being very self-limiting, unwilling to do pretty much anything for fear of it increasing her pain levels. Bit by bit, a coworker and I convinced her to first roll over, then sit, then stand, then spend longer and longer periods out of bed. Finally, we got to the point where we were able to do a home visit, and you could see her remembering what it was like to be in her own space. That light of desire to go home was in her eyes, and she worked harder from that point on, and 2 weeks later she was discharged. Helping her into the car and waving it out of the parking lot was the best feeling I've had so far in my career. TL, doctor, was able to help someone go from bedridden inpatient to home in a wheelchair after months of painstaking work. On my boss's birthday, people decided to have a cake for him, kind of a surprise party. When he got onto the room where the surprise was, he started laughing and blushing. Then all of my coworkers started chatting and joke about stuff, and the cake itself was pretty delicious. That day had a really good vibe, and that kind of situation is one of the reasons why I like my job. I worked as an EMT for a number of years. My first and only full resuscitation has been one of the best days of my life.
I was a stay-at-home mom.
With 4 children, ages 8, 4, 3 and 1. You can imagine how crazed my life could be. One day, we were over at my mother-in-law's house for Sunday dinner, and I had left the kids with the family so I could run to the store to get butter or rolls, some small thing to go with dinner. When I came back, my mother-in-law said, "Did you see how your kids' faces lit up the second you walked in the door?" I hadn't seen anything. But the next time the situation came up, I paid attention this time. And she was right. I was so busy being crazy harassed mom with too much to worry about that I was missing it. My kids adored me, and I wasn't seeing it. Trust me, after that, I paid a lot more attention. I'm an EMT, and I would say one of my best days was a call we got for a young girl who was feeling suicidal. I will admit, I'm not sure she needed an ambulance, but I spent a lot of time in the back with her, talking, and she seemed a lot better and happier by the time we got to the hospital. It struck me because it was the first call where I felt like I had truly helped someone with their mental health problems. I still think about her sometimes, and I hope she's doing better. Paramedic here. My best ever job was on a hot summer's day in Australia. We were called to an 11-year-old boy that had drowned in his family pool. I was halfway through a foot-long meatball sub when it happened and damn near shit myself. We were about 5 minutes away, and when we arrived the boy's mother was providing CPR while his 8-year-old twin sisters watched on, horrified. I checked the carotid pulse, non-existent, and started to take over on compressions. My partner started to unpack the defib pads while our student toweled the kid off. Defib comes back showing ventricular tachycardia, one of the only 2 shockable rhythms, so we hit him with the lightning and he instantly went back into a sinus rhythm, normal heart rhythm. Kid then began to sputter. We rolled him into the recovery position to help him get the water out of his lungs. In such a high-octane situation, it honestly felt so good to be able to successfully revive somebody. I still think about the job any time that I wonder why I'm in this profession. I used to work as a janitor in a high school. There were 3 of us in the school, and during the summer break, we were normally given a list of jobs to do, but we were mainly just expected to show up and be on hand if we were needed. This one year, we finished all our work super early into the break, so we had practically nothing to do. One day, I was sitting in a classroom watching movies on my phone, when my friend radioed me and asked me to come to the roof. Bearing in mind we were the only people on staff authorized to access the roof. I went up and walked outside. It was a beautiful, sunny day. My friend had set up some chairs from a classroom and had a bucket of ice with some beers floating in it. We spent the whole day up on the roof sunbathing and drinking. It was a magic time. Not actually the job, but a part of it. It also counts as a work day according to payroll, so I count it. I work in oil exploration on international project sites, so I have to fly overseas to and from work sites every 6 weeks or so. Slight problem, I have a fear of flying, specifically turbulence. One time was heading back from work and had a 12-hour flight across the North Atlantic in winter get home. For those not familiar, winter is the worst to fly that far north due to turbulence from the jet stream, so I was dreading that flight. Whole flight went by without even a bump. Also, got upgraded to business for free, and the airline had Mars attacks on the e-face system. Best of all, was going home for 6 weeks of break. My favorite workday so far. Military, we were on a natural disaster deployment, hurricane, and it was super last minute, so dining arrangements hadn't been contracted out and no one even knew where they were going. We get to the first location where we were going to bunker down for the night and were told to go to the grocery store that was still open and get whatever supplies we could. Randomly, there was a Chinese restaurant still open throughout the hurricane. The first shirt authorized us to order dinner there if we wanted, as long as no one got hurt. We had so many orders placed at the restaurant that night. They were happy, we were happy. The next morning our civil engineers jerry-rigged a coffee maker so everyone could have coffee before setting out to our next location. It was the worst tasting coffee I've ever had, but everyone was so grateful and it was a huge morale booster. We break up and head out to our next locations. We're at a place where everything is closed and destroyed. Still no dining contracts. So we go to whatever convenience stores are still open. We went by the busload because we had to drive a ways to get to them, and buy whatever they have. Candy bars, chips, it was basically all junk food. After almost a week of eating garbage, all the junk food sounds great, but after a week my body felt like hell. A local restaurant reopens to provide dinner for us. I had a completely basic garden salad that tasted like heaven. We also came into the dining area to see a door was plastered with letters from the community thanking us for the help. Best week ever. So on Halloween my boss decided to give everyone a $100 bonus by giving everyone $100 in an envelope, but that was just on the new wool side. The CMS side needed more people, so I went over there to help them out, and the boss on the CMS ended up coming through with a Winnie the Pooh costume and his kids. They gave them $100 bonuses. Since I went over there a lot and helped them out whenever they needed extra hands, I got another $100. And they had a pizza party there, so I didn't have to make lunch that day. Did you make it through the whole video? If so, thank you for your time. If you enjoyed, feel free to like, comment and subscribe. Have a good day, or night, or evening, or morning, or whatever.